Mother Nature decided that 5 days off for the Guardians was not quite enough. Also decided to deny Jose Ramirez a chance at chasing history. But if history tells us anything, I think Jose Ramirez will be happy if it turns out anything like the last time the Guardians only played 161 games.
Tanner Bobby the Guardians, and you're listening to Locked On Guardians.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to I almost said the game today. Welcome to the show today. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you can get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today.
On today's Locked On Guardians, the fun begins later this week. It's playoff baseball time, so if you had fun this season, time to feel nervous and like you're going to throw up and have white knuckles. It's going to be lots of fun. We're going to talk about what we learned from the Guardians this season. We'll just kind of talk about some other takeaways from the regular season, and then we're going to jump into full postseason mode. So we're going to do a little bit of a light scouting on the Tigers and Astros roster here today. We'll do more throughout the week as the matchup gets closer and we see what the Tigers and Astros do during the series, and we'll talk about the roster and how the Guardians are going to handle the bye week and other status updates going into this little break for the Guardians ahead of the ALDS.
And Cleveland fans should be used to bye weeks. Cleveland Browns are on one every week, it seems like, right? Oh, is that...
Tip your waiters, folks. He'll be here all week.
I didn't get canceled. I'm back after telling John Fisher to go visit a hurricane, not to make light of a hurricane and all the terrible disasters, only to show my disdain for John Fisher. For those who do not know me, I've been here since the start of Locked On MLB Network. For that, I was a nationally recognized prospect and draft analyst at Scout and 24/7. And before that, I was your 24th favorite blogger at every Cleveland sports blog that has or will exist.
What was last week? Do you remember what Friday was?
Remember the bonus episode was I said I didn't look up once. I'm like, I'm your favorite. I finally made myself
number one status.
Yep.
Number one for Travis Spezzana. That's what it is. Yeah. I'm Justin Lano, the other host here. I was not nationally recognized anywhere before I started here, but some of the places I have been covering the Guardians minor league system since 2007 include Guardians Baseball Insider, where I was the editor-in-chief for a time, also with Prospects Live and the Morning Journal and the News Herald, all kinds of fun stuff. All right, so real quickly before we get into the playoff stuff, Guardians and Astros didn't play Sunday. They lost 2 of 2 to the Astros over the weekend. Jeff, do you have any worries or takeaways from this series that meant absolutely nothing to either team?
Not really. I mean, there's that bit where I'm like, man, I feel like Rocchio's throws, we've seen more of them, but it's also the weirdness of like, why is it every time he messes up a play, it ends up costing them a game? Like, guys have lots of mistakes, just his seem to make a bigger impact for whatever reason. That was the most annoying thing, because I think if he doesn't miss throw on Saturday, they win that one. But I mean, it was backups versus backups because there wasn't a lot on the line. Yeah, it's that, like, you know, a lot of people in the comments were very upset about the Rocchio throw, and I get it. It did cost them a game, and he's had several throws that cost them a game, but just it's weird, right? Like, it's weird how significant every single one of his misses have been.
Yeah, I don't know if defensive metrics, I'm not an expert on them. I know how to read them, but I don't know the specifics of the algorithms or the formulas that go into them. So I don't know if they measure impact. Are they singular play focused? Is there impact that goes with them? I don't know. Because if they're impact graded, then yeah, Rocchio would have a terrible. I guess they must not be, because otherwise Rocchio's grades would be terrible. Because I feel like when he does make a bad play, it does really hurt the team. But when there's not a bad, like, otherwise he makes the great play. I don't know. He's kind of very Brian Shaw-esque at shortstop, right? Like 85% of the time he gets the job done, and the 15% he doesn't, it blows up in their face and everybody notices. And just for the record too, I know all the comments are like, don't put Rocchio on the roster. There's nobody else. Like, he's going to play shortstop. The only question would be Gabriel Arias replacing Daniel Schneemann, but Arias hasn't been at backup in half a year, and Schneemann, they seem to value the fact that he's left-handed and can play shortstop and other places. But I don't know. I don't want Schneemann playing shortstop either. He's not a capable shortstop either. So Rocchio's it. Like, you just need to hope that Rocchio has his focus turned on in the postseason, because there's no other answer. You can say whatever you want, but that's just how it's going to be. And I would expect Roku to play almost every inning at shortstop unless there's some weird injury or pinch hitting situation where he ends up over there, or Tyler Freeman's on the roster for some weird reason. I don't know. Whatever. I'm not too concerned about the weekend either. I mean, you had Ben Lively and Joey Cantillo pitching this one. Lively was shaky, and I don't know. I feel like Cleveland pitching Lively and Cantillo to me says they're likely not going to be on the playoff roster, and if they are, they're going to be like low leverage situation dudes. Like they're not going to really go to those guys because they ended up not using Cantillo out of the pen. I thought the idea this weekend was to use an opener in front of him and then see how he does out of the bullpen, and maybe he's an option there. And they were going to do the same with Williams on Sunday. It was supposed to be Nick Sandlin on Sunday with Gavin Williams to follow, and that would have gotten him playoff, bullpen experience. So now you don't have that. So who really knows how that's going to work? Maybe they can time it up for a sim game this week and do it with him. But coming in out of the bullpen in the playoffs, I have to imagine is like one of the most difficult things to do because you're just going pure adrenaline. And, and it's Gavin Williams, especially, and Joey Cantillo even, it's going to be their first playoff appearance ever. So, like, I don't know any sim game environment you can recreate that or that feeling for. Like, there's no, like,
because there isn't.
If those guys were to wear, like, Apple Watches or some sort of, like, heart monitor stuff, I guarantee you could match them up from what their heart rate was in the sim game versus the actual playoffs. It would be 100% a different reading coming out. So, you can practice it all you want, but there's no way to recreate the actual feeling you're going to get. So I don't know what they'll do in that regard. That's something that I think stinks for me is that you didn't get a chance to do that. And obviously you didn't get a chance to have Jose Ramirez go for 40 homers, 40 steals, and 40 doubles. He was a home run and a double shy. Jose still had a great season though. 6.5 F4, 141 WRC plus. It's his best year. If we're ruling out 2020 just because it's 2020, it's his best season since 2018 by far. And I think that it's about what I expected from him, truthfully, going into his age 31 season. I'm not saying I thought he was going to have his third best season of his career ever this year, but I think this is just what you come to expect from Jose Ramirez, and expect that until he doesn't do it. I mean, there are definitely some signs there, but overall, this was a fantastic season by Jose Ramirez, and I want to count the home run and the double in the playoffs towards his stats. Can we do that? If he gets a home run or double, we'll just say it counts.
No. I, on the other hand, I don't know. I keep waiting just because guys with his size and profile typically, and I know he's a unicorn, and like I should just be like, okay, yeah, he's fine. He'll be fine because that's what unicorns do. But like, and especially with the slow start, like I was very concerned, but he can kind of prove me wrong as he likes to do. And just showed that after that, because that's to me, maybe the craziest part about this is like, he had a legitimately poor start to the year, and to get to the numbers he had it's an extra accomplishment because of how poor the year started for him. So, kudos to him turning it around. He had his ups and downs, as we all know, but he ended up being, a very Jose-esque season. He's going to be, once again, a top 5 MVP finish for him seems likely. And yeah, Jose was Jose. And I think the biggest thing is just make sure we're not, as fans, taking for granted, granted the greatest third baseman in franchise history.
One of the greatest, maybe one of the 2 or 3 greatest players in franchise history. I mean, I don't know how you quantify all that necessarily, but definitely a top 3. And I think he's going to finish top 3 in the MVP too. I think it's going to be Judge.
A lot of places have him listed as 5th. Like he was 5th.
Who was 3 and 4?
I believe both Law and Stark had him 5th, with Gunnar Henderson higher, and I gotta think who else. But I've seen him like listed as 5th in most places.
Oh, Keith Law just forgot that Emmanuel Clase existed, so we're just gonna forget anything he says.
Well, that's because he's always been anti, which I get to a degree. Like if you're going, at least he's consistent. I'll say, like, if you're going to be anti-reliever, stay. That they just don't. Which I mean, no reliever
context matters though. Context
does,
this season
but
matters.
but
to not have him in the top 10 or whatever it was, top 5, I think is
top 5. Yeah.
That's a little egregious. So I can't imagine who's 3 and 4 above.
Soto and Henderson were who Jason Starks were, and I believe those were also who, because Soto did have a better year offensively, than Jose. I mean, on pure numbers, I get it. Henderson, that's debatable, and Soto brings no defensive value, but Jose's defensive value was kind of a net negative this year, I want to say. So, I get it.
He was a positive. I'd have to look at the outs above average, but he's got a 1.7 on Fangraphs for defense. I don't know what outs above average looks like for him, but
I'd have to go look. But it's there's been some decline there. But yeah, I mean
plus three.
He's but offensively there was not. He had a really solid year. I think he probably is going to end up fifth. I do think that is fifth or sixth overall. But we'll have to see. I just think that you probably are looking at Bobby Witt. It's kind of like the American League version of the National League Rookie of the Year, where it's you have 5 really deserving candidates. Bobby Witt's probably going to have the best year in recent memory to not get an MVP. And then Soto was Soto. And I think Jose it should be in that group of 4, to me at least.
Yeah, I would say 4. I mean, I haven't seen Gunnar Henderson's
wasn't as strong in the second half, just in general. His overall production was not quite there in the second half, I want to say.
Yeah, all Baltimore in the second half had a downturn for sure. I would say at least, yeah, I guess I can understand Soto. I shouldn't have forgot about Soto. So yeah, 4 or 5 sounds right then for Jose. And it just stinks that every year I feel like he has a career year or one of his best years. I mean, this is by WRC plus 141. This is his one. We're not counting 2020. We're counting this as number 1, 2. This is his 3rd best season by WRC plus if we throw out 2020. It just stinks that I feel like every year he does this, he ends up losing out to somebody, and it's been Judge, it's been Ohtani, and we thought, hey, Ohtani went to the NL, so he'll have a chance. And then Aaron Judge continues to be Aaron Judge, and then Bobby Witt is a superstar too. So at least the game is a lot of fun. I will say at least the big takeaway for me from the Guardians regular season is just this bullpen. I mean, good bullpens can hide a lot of warts on a team. Very rarely, though, can they cover up. The Guardians finished the season as a very average offensive club, 100 WRC plus for the year as a team. So they are average across the board as an offensive team from that perspective. And the starting pitching, again, we've said it multiple times on the show. 4 of the 5 starters that started the year in the rotation are either gone or in the minors or hurt, whatever. And the bullpen just did its thing all year, and it did its thing with 3 rookies essentially, with Cade Smith, Hunter Gaddis. I guess Tim Herron technically was not a rookie. You had Sabrowski at one point. You didn't have Sam Henches. I mean, you're never going to see another bullpen season like this. All these guys on this bullpen could come back next year, and you can add in Trevor Stephan, and they probably won't be as good just because that's just how it works. So hopefully they can ride this bullpen all the way to the end of October, because it's just so hard to create. I hope people appreciate that too, because from what we found out and just what we know as baseball fans, the worst feeling is to blow a game that you were leading, right? That's the worst feeling to have is a bullpen blow up when you lose the game that you should have won. Guardians fans did not have to experience that a lot this year because the bullpen was ridiculous. So hopefully you appreciate all those wins because of it, because again, all these guys are going to be back next year, and they might not be anywhere near as good, and they might still be good next year, and they still won't be able to replicate this. That's just how special they were.
Yeah. I mean, it's a bullpen for the ages. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Yeah. All right. Enough about the regular season. We've got plenty of time to rehash that when the full season is over, hopefully more than a month from now. But we'll go into some status updates heading into the Guardians bye week. Weird to say that. First time we've ever had to say that. That's very strange. And then we'll get into some scouting of the Astros and Tigers, just kind of what we looked up and what we think about those matchups going into the week. So all that coming up on today's Locked On Guardians.
First, let's head over to FanDuel. I was kind of looking at their postseason, the stats, and you can have players to hit 2+ home runs in that opening round, of potential Guardians faces. Kyle Tucker 1, Kerry Carpenter 2, Matt Verling tied with Alex Bregman for the 3rd best odds. Just to have 1 home run. Again, Kyle Tucker at the top, Kerry Carpenter. I kind of like Harry Carpenter there at plus 125, if I'm being honest. Like to hit one home run in the wild card series, Carpenter's been playing really well of late. But right now, hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return. America's #1 sports book. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check on the latest stats, view play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Again, kind of like Harry Carpenter to get one home run in that divisional series. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's the highest amount we've had with this deal when you place a $5 bet. If you've been waiting, now is the time to jump in. Again, go put your $5 on Harry Carpenter, get your $200 in bonus bets. Just visit FanDuel.com.
Our pal Sully over at Locked On MLB wrapped up the final games of the Oakland Athletics history. I know he was hosting Locked On A's too, and he was doing a bunch of stuff, obviously looking at the rest of the season. So I know he's going to have playoff previews as well for all the teams, all those breakdowns, probably looking at the historic season of Shohei Ohtani, all that fun stuff without all the yelling you get from other networks, and it's every day. So you can count on Sully every day in the playoffs for non-Guardians and some Guardians MLB takes for the playoffs. Just check him out over at Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It is your team every day, even if you're your other team. If you're listening to this and maybe you're a fan of another team or you like other teams besides the Guardians, even in the offseason, it's every day. He's got other stuff going on. All right, some status updates going into the bye week here for the Guardians. Again, that's still such a weird thing to say. What's five or 6 days off if you count Sunday. So Alex Cobb was supposed to throw a sim game on Sunday. I do not know if that sim game happened on Sunday. I didn't see any reports about it.
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
Yeah, he was supposed to throw a sim game this afternoon on Sunday afternoon. I think he got it in. I think the rain was not quite there yet, so I will have to see Monday when media availability comes around Monday. He's really the only guy up in the air. I mean, Kwan played a couple of games. He's going to be just fine. Tanner Bivey's going to throw his sim game on Monday, so he is lined up to go game 1 Saturday. No surprise there. After that, everything's kind of up in the air. But there's really not a whole lot of unexpected going for the Guardians into the postseason. Like, it's just going to be the roster, and I think we'll talk more about the roster once we know who the opponent's going to be. Because I don't know, do you think that there will be any changes to the roster based on if it's Detroit or Houston? Which, by the way, if you have not seen at this point, it's Houston, Detroit. The Tigers lost on Sunday. The Royals won. The Royals are the tiebreaker. They finished with the same record. So the Royals in the last day confirmed they'll head to Baltimore for 3, and the Tigers will visit Houston for 3. Do you think, just what we looked at so far, do you think for the Guardians roster there will be any significant changes based on who they play, depending on who wins the series?
I don't think so. Maybe I'll be proven wrong in this. Houston hits lefties and righties pretty evenly, so maybe it's just like I think there's a better chance Cantillo makes it versus Detroit than he does versus Houston, just because they're already going to have Lively as a long man. They may not want 3 lefties. They might want one less pitcher in general. So I think maybe Cantillo's chances of making it are better, but I don't know if there's too much beyond that. You just got to kind of run with who you got in terms of your offense. So yeah, for me, I think there's not going to be too significant one way or another, but who knows? Maybe I'll be very wrong. Wouldn't be the first time.
I think the only thing that's going to matter at the end of the day is, it's going to be Cantillo, Lively, and Eric Sabrowski is going to be, and Pedro Avila. Because do you really need Pedro Avila and Ben Lively and Joey Cantillo? Like, I think it's one of those 3, because you're going to have Morgan. I'm sorry, Lively, Cantillo, Sabrowski, and Avila. That's 4.
I think Sabrowski is safe. They're going to want a second lefty, so I think it's
over. You think Sabrowski is safer than Cantillo?
Yes.
No matter what?
Yes.
Okay.
Just because he's used to that role, which is,
Cantillo is not. You're right. Yeah.
So I think it's just that. It's just the used to role.
It probably comes down to Avila and Lively then. Do you need both of them? Probably not, because Avila's been your long man, and Lively's got bullpen experience before, but it's just like, I don't know, who's pitched better out of the bullpen this year? It's been Avila. And I think the other spot is what? Angel Martinez versus Miles Straw. That's really what it comes down to, if you ask me, is it comes down to those two and how you want to handle that roster spot. Although I'd still like to see Martinez make it and Straw make it, but Steeman's on the roster, I'd assume. We'll see. As far as the Astros go, I think you and I both agree the Astros are the stronger team overall. That's on paper. I don't know. Here's my thing on the Tigers. I don't know if I've said this on the air yet. I know I've said it out to other people and to you. And this is going to make me look really stupid, probably. I'm sure people will disagree, and I'm sure if the Tigers win, I'll get it wrong. But I feel like when you have these big runs in the second half in September to make the playoffs, I feel like sometimes you expend all of your energy, all of your effort, and some luck too, because you don't go on the kind of run the Tigers go on. I'm not saying they didn't play well, and didn't deserve it because they played their tails off, but a little bit of luck is involved in that, I would say. And sometimes I feel like you expend a lot of that just trying to make the playoffs the way they did. I go back to like the 2013 Indians where they won the last 10 games of the season, and then they were bounced in the wild card game by Alex Cobb. And that's a one-game playoff. Who's to say what the Guardians would have done if it was 3 of them versus the Rays that year? I don't know. And then go back to the 2017 Cleveland team where they had
you and I
22
debated
win
this
streak.
one.
Yeah, they had the 22-game win streak in September, right? Everyone thought they were playing their best baseball going into September. And what the underlying issues were in 2017 were, Kluber had a bad back, Edwin rolled his ankle, and Michael Brantley didn't have a healthy ankle. And there was all kinds of goofy stuff going on. But
they didn't play their best starter at the time, who was Carrasco. For some reason,
yeah, some bad decisions were made too.
My biggest knock about Tito's whole time here is that he didn't play Carrasco in that series.
Yeah. So I feel like you want to be playing your best ball going into the
didn't
playoffs.
Play him twice. I just want to state that before someone gets in the comments about exactness.
Yeah. I feel like, yeah, you want to play well going into the playoffs, but at the same time, when you go on, I mean, the Guardians were going to win the 2017 division anyway. It just took them late to turn it on. They were the best team in that division all year. They were kind of iffy throughout the year. But I just feel like teams that hustle so hard to get into the playoffs at the end of the year, sometimes when you're making up a lot of ground, I just feel like a lot of that energy is expended doing that. And you get to the playoffs and it's hard to keep it up. But then again, you've got Tariq Skubal game 1 versus Framber Valdez. So you've got a punching chance. I don't know. What do you think? We can do some more scouting in a little bit, but what do you think? Do you think that this is an evenly matched series, or am I off base? Am I off base at all by saying the Tigers maybe have already expended a lot of energy and luck getting in?
I'm just gonna keep saying apparently, but I don't think that they've expended that much. Like, to me, that's not as much of a thing. Like, you'd rather be I don't even know if I can say you'd rather be the hot team than the cold team. Because again, I'll point out, like, Texas was a pretty not hot team in that final few weeks. So it's all about how you're going to match up and what you're going to do. And Houston is the better squad, but I'm not going to count out Detroit yet.
I agree. All right, we'll scout more of those teams in a second. We'll talk about the advantages, disadvantages. We'll talk about our thoughts on that series. Got a couple other things we got to point out as well about the Guardians season and going into the playoffs, all on the rest of today's show. So stick around. Playoff tickets, man, they're going to be hard to come by this time of year. All kinds of tickets are going to be hard to come by. Maybe you're one of the people who are waiting to see what the timing of the playoff games are going to be. I mean, the Astros and Tigers, they're playing at 2:30 this week. Not fun for those guys. So maybe you're someone who works and you're like, I got to wait and see if I can even go to this game based on the time they're going to play it. By the way, Saturday, no matter who their Guardians are playing on Saturday, it's looking like a 3:30 start. So maybe you work Saturdays, maybe you have other stuff going on, and you had to wait till the last minute to get tickets because of that. Game Time is the app you want to go with. And they have a good feature right now called Game Time Picks. It makes getting tickets for your favorite live events easier. It just filters out all the fluff, so it tells you what the best deals are at that game you want to go to. For me, I always turn on the all-in pricing too, because if I'm buying tickets like that, I want to know what I'm paying before I get to checkout. I don't want to be fooled by thinking, oh man, this ticket's only going to be $80, and then I get to checkout and it's like 120 because of fees and all that. I don't like that. I turn on the all-in pricing on Game Time, and it tells me exactly what I'm going to it's going to take for me to get in the door of my favorite event, whether it's Guardians playoff game, a comedy show, a concert, all that fun stuff. Game Time has it all. They've got all kinds of deals, and they show you your price. They show you the view of your seats too, which is a great feature, I think, too, for Game Time. I use this app for other tickets. I've used it for comedy shows. I've used it for concerts. Going to use it to go to Ohio State game this year. So I recommend this app if you're someone who wants to wait till the last minute to buy a ticket, or if you just have to, based on your schedule. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use our code LOCKEDONLB for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account, redeem our code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Terms apply. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Guardians baseball in the playoffs. You can hear all the hometown action on your Sirius XM app throughout the playoffs, and all the playoff action actually on your Sirius XM app. Just search Guardians. So I think the thing for the first round of the playoffs that we've determined is that, and then this is not like it's any major breaking analysis here, is we want that series to go 3 games, right? I think that's the overarching theme, is you want that series to go 3 games, right?
Yeah. You want to get them as tired as possible, have their rotation kind of thrown off. You definitely want them. I mean, I guess there's maybe a logic because, yeah, I mean, yes, it does get their number 1 starter closer to being back in the series, but maybe with Detroit, you would say specifically only 2. I think with Houston, definitely 3. Right.
So for Houston, we know Framber Valdez is going game 1 against the Tigers. We have a pretty good idea of how Houston's gonna line things up. Not really a surprise here. It's Framber Valdez, and then it's going to be one of Yusei Kikuchi or Hunter Brown in game 2 and game 3 with those 2. And then game 1 will be, if they advance past Detroit in the first round, game 1 for them will likely be Ronel Blanco. And then game 2 on is because the off day on Sunday, game 2 on Monday can be Framber again, and he can also come back for game 5. And then they can go Kikuchi and Brown again for 3 and 4. And then Framber game 5. For Detroit, it's going to be obviously Tariq Skubal in game 1. And then game 2, I don't know. It could go a lot of ways. I think it's going to be Reese Olson. And then 3 is maybe Mize or Montero. And then if they win that series, they could come in with whoever they didn't use between Mize and Montero. And they could even go with a bullpen game. And then obviously Skubal comes back for game 2. So pretty sure the Astros have a rotation advantage without a doubt. The interesting thing for Houston, though, is, speaking for Cleveland specifically, is they don't do well against lefties as far as hitting is concerned. That's the one thing that Cleveland, I think, is going to enjoy, or at least have some sort of advantage for, is Framber Valdez is a lefty. Cleveland's got a lineup that obviously does well against lefties because you've got Lane Thomas. Jose's had a great year against lefties.
They're much better against lefties. They're like I think I said they're like a 110. They're like top 10 in the league against lefties, and they're, bottom 10
it's also
against
assuming
righties.
John Kenzie Noel has any fighting chance of hitting a baseball in October.
I mean, they didn't have him playing that much towards the end against lefties either. We kind of saw a little bit less of him.
It was a disaster late in the year. So, but Cleveland's had success against lefties this year. You have David Fry, obviously. So Valdez and Kikuchi are lefties. Josh Hader's not had a fantastic year. He's been fine, but certainly not dominant from a high leverage perspective for a closer that makes the money he makes. They don't really have a second lefty in that pen. They've got Brian King and Caleb Ferguson, who are kind of not high leverage lefties. They're kind of medium leverage guys. So we'll see how that goes. But the funny thing is, too, just looking at WRC Plus for the Astros pitching staff, too, is that they don't get lefties, or they don't get righties or left-handed hitters out that well. So that also bodes well for Cleveland, with having Kwan and Jose being a switch hitter, and Manzardo and Will Brennan and Josh Naylor, all those guys. That bodes well for them there as well. And I don't know, Houston's got all the experience in the world, and we don't know what's going to happen with Yordan Alvarez, whether or not he's going to be healthy enough.
It's a big missing piece, a very big missing piece.
it kind of feels like it's 50 for him in the wild card round. They have the better lineup no matter what than Detroit, I would say. But it's a very top-heavy lineup. Like, it's Altuve, Tucker, and Bregman are your big dogs. If you got Yordan on there, he's good. Yainer Diaz, old friend, has been solid. After that, like Victor Caratini hits right-hand lefties well. Pena's okay. It's a very top-heavy lineup. But I don't know if Detroit has the dogs to keep up with Houston, but they've got a great pitching staff. They got a great bullpen. They've used a lot of relievers down the stretch. They might be bullpen in some of this playoff games. I don't know. It's going to be interesting. AJ Hinch knows Houston well. He knows where all the trash cans are, right?
He is. He's got them all tuned up and ready to bang.
Yeah. What are your takeaways from Houston? I think I'm saying I think Houston is the better team against Detroit, but in some ways, I also feel like Houston might be a better matchup for Cleveland. I know Cleveland didn't have a great year against Houston, and they actually struggled against Detroit too. But I feel
did they end up winning the series though against Detroit just because that last week went well for them?
They did. They won 7-6 against Detroit. Yeah.
So I thought.
I don't know.
That's what I thought. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I looking at these teams, it's like still part of me would have rather faced. To me, Kansas City is they've got those three great pitchers. And then after that, their bullpen is an issue. They've got maybe the worst lineup. Like Kansas City is the weakest playoff team, in my opinion. Now watch them make it to the World Series because I've said that. I do think like Detroit's got Skubal, and then it's kind of like Olsen was great when he was healthy, but there was the health issue. You and I were discussing. It's like Tyler Holton will probably get a start just because they can throw a bullpen game. I'll be curious if Cleveland considers a bullpen game at some point. Like it's going to be a wild one in the next round. I think I'd still rather face Detroit because they have more undefined characteristics. Like Houston, if you were to put all these teams together, Houston probably has like at least 3 of the top 5 hitters in that series. They have, 3 of the top 4 starters in that series. They have, bullpen, there might be a little bit more back and forth, but Houston has kind of more of the high value players. So I think I'd still prefer the Tigers, if that makes sense.
Yeah, Detroit's second half September fueled playoff run was mostly pitching. Their offense in September was pretty meager. By WRC plus, it was 94. They were only 17th in runs scored for the month at 99, so they didn't score a ton of runs this month. Although Cleveland, to be fair, was 22nd. They scored 90 runs in September too. Although they had a lot of off days. I don't know how the off days compare. Cleveland played 25 games this month. Detroit played 24. So they played 1 less game and scored 9 more runs than the Guardians. So WRC Plus says the Guardians had a better offense by 6 percentage points for September. And then by the second half, Detroit's offense only scored 264 runs. They were 21st, but Cleveland was 254, down at 26th, whereas Houston is middle of the pack in offense in the second half. So, yeah, I think you'd rather face Detroit because their offense is closer to what you have, and Cleveland's pitching can shut them down. Houston's got a lot of guys in that lineup, and even if it is top heavy, 7, 8, 9, you might be able to have some soft innings, some breaks there. I don't really worry about the matchup offense versus pitching for Cleveland because again, with Tanner, you're going to go 2 times to the order. That's going to be it for Tanner. There's no way he's getting a third. I know.
No point in the postseason to it.
There's no
as
point.
Much as I believe in Tanner.
Yeah. There's just no point in anybody doing it. And I don't know that I would let any other starter face more than like 15 batters.
No.
I think you're maybe getting 15 outs max from Boyd or Cobb or whoever, and you're going to that bullpen, 12, 15 outs, especially in the first round with all those off days, because that's where your advantage is. You want to get those guys in as much as you can because that's where you're going to, limit the damage. It's going to come down to scoring runs. It's just all it is. Like you're going to need Josh Naylor to be hot. You're going to need Kwan to be back to decent Kwan. Again, we've said this before.
He showed some signs, though. I'm hoping.
He hit a home run his first game back. Hard to be better than that first at bat. So you're going to need Kwan, you're going to need Jose, you're going to need Naylor, and you're going to need Manzardo, and then you're going to need one of Naylor to have a decent game, or Brennan, or Noel gets into one, or David Fry versus the lefty, or Lane Thomas. So you need 3 or 4 guys, each night. It's going to come down. I don't know, because I think Houston's got a lot of experience, and their top 3 in the rotation are as good as anybody's. Framber Valdez is really good, but man, Tariq Skubal is a terrible, terrible matchup for anybody.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't want to face Tariq Skubal twice in a series. I don't necessarily want to face Framber Valdez twice in the series. I think what's going to be key for the Guardians, if they're going to win that series, I think the chances are you got to do it before you get to game 5, before you got to face those guys twice, right?
Yeah, you want to take care of business and not have to face the best of the best multiple times. Like, that's just, you
can throw Tanner twice, but that'll be something we'll have to talk about later in the week too, Tanner's going to be the game 1 starter. Do you try to save him for game 5, depending on what the series is? Or do you use him in game 4 to try to close it out if you're in that situation? I think you use him in game 4 no matter what, because you either got to keep the series going or you're trying to clinch the series in game 4. So I think you put him on the mound no matter what. But yeah, you don't want to get to a game 5 and have to face Tariq Skubal or Framber Valdez. You just don't. So win it in 4 is the best way. By the way, the Guardians only played 161 games this year. The last time, Jeff, the Guardians only played, and I'm not really a big believer in this stuff, but we can talk about it anyway. The last time they played 161 games in the year was 2016. So I think Jose will trade his 40th home run and his 40th double this year for a trip to the World Series, with hopefully one more win.
Yeah, certainly would be nice, would it not? Just one more. That's not much.
Somehow this bullpen is better than the 2016 bullpen.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I feel a lot more comfortable with the big 3 than the big 3 then. And I say that as someone who is a dyed-in-the-wool Shaw supporter at this time. Want to thank you all for joining us. Hopefully, you're joining because it's a fun time. Who cares about a weekend of kind of meaningless games? Let's focus on the fun that is coming, the important stuff, the postseason. You don't get it every year. We're a bit spoiled here in Cleveland when it comes to baseball because we've had it more than most, but it is still exciting to have playoff baseball nowadays.
October baseball's always fun. We're hoping to have Andre not on tomorrow. We'll catch up with him and talk about the season and the playoffs as well. We will continue to look at the Tigers and Astros, break more things down there. We'll look ahead to the roster decisions for the postseason. We'll squeeze in some minor league stuff throughout the week as well, I'm sure, but mostly it's going to be looking at, playoff matchups. So we're going to keep an eye on how that series is going, and we're going to talk about the roster decisions, and we'll dig more into the minutia on those 2 teams as the week goes on. So lots to talk about ahead of Saturday's game 1 ALDS versus the Tigers or the Astros. Let us know who you guys want to face in the comments.
And I have a new cat, so there we go. Playoff cat, right? That's only going to help our ratings. That, like I said, looks similar, new cat. But thank you all for joining us and being a part of the Locked On Guardians team. We appreciate each and every one of you who jump in and help us out by downloading daily, being an everydayer. Thank you, and go Guardians, go.